Christian parenting.
Hello, my name is Dina Gonzer, and welcome back to the Dish It Girl podcast. Does anyone else feel like this time of year is kind of like the foodie Olympics? You have back-to-back holidays with celebrations in between, as well as cookie baking and all these different traditions. So it is definitely game time for those of us who love food and love to entertain. But I wanted to take a second and say, although I'm sharing all of these side dish recipes and trying to inspire you in the kitchen, let's take a moment to say, this may not be your thing, or this may not be your year for this, and that's okay. You know, food right now is a financial burden for many, and I want to be sensitive to that. Don't make it stop you from attending a gathering this season or even having one. Because, you know, taking a big bag of popcorn and jazzing it up with some garlic powder and some salt, or if you have any dried herbs in your spice cabinet, that makes a difference. Pair it with a little bit of hot chocolate and you've got a really great movie night. Maybe you can't bring something, but you can offer your help for setup or cleanup. As much fun as festive food can be, don't lose sight of, at the end of the day, people love you and want to be with you. It's not always about what you can bring, but more about being there. So I hope that's encouraging to someone out there who needs it. And this week's recipe is all about comfort food and feeding a crowd. So if you can make a little more and do a little more this holiday season, you're blessed that way, let's do so. And one of these recipes for me is my mac and cheese recipe. It's creamy and dreamy with a couple of different cheeses and an herby panko topping. It is the perfect cozy dish. And this week in my kitchen, I plan to also be continuing to lean into soup season with some butternut squash and apple soup. It's one of those really simple things to make. Pair it with a grilled cheese, you're done. And then, being I took the time to cut up that butternut squash, which if you've ever cut up butternut or acorn squash, it's a workout. Sometimes it feels like you're taking your life into your hands because you might cut a finger off. So if I'm going to go through all that trouble, I'm going to use it twice. So I have this great sheet pan meal. It's butternut squash, chicken sausage, crispy sage, one pan, super easy, minimal cleanup. Who doesn't love that, especially this time of year? And I'm also overdue to make a batch of my pumpkin chocolate chip cookies. I keep saying to Sienna, we're going to make them. We're going to make them. And then we just get too busy and I don't. So I'm making it a point next week, pumpkin chocolate chip cookies. And that recipe's in my book, At the Kitchen Sink. It's one of the few things I bake well. I'm definitely more of a cook, less of a baker. But when I get things right, I get it right. So make sure to check the show notes for the recipe and keep up with me on my Instagram, DishItGirl Dina, because I pop on my stories showing you how to make these dishes throughout the week. And so I have to admit, I had a different podcast plan today. I had a different topic, but I felt like God was speaking to me. So maybe this is something you may need to hear. You know, this was titled different. However, the recipe was always going to be mac and cheese because we all need a good recipe for mac and cheese in our life, right? I've noticed lately that I've gotten very good at looking at where I'm not instead of where I am. I'm also quite talented when it comes to identifying what I don't have rather than what I do. And I also, as tired as I may be, seem to have the energy to spin on these hamster wheels. In short, I like to compile lots of garbage and then just sit on top of it and wonder why things stink. I mean, I'm sure that sounds super appealing on a food podcast. But in a season when we are all starting to hear about gratefulness, thankfulness, as we get closer to Thanksgiving, these words ring in my mind and they've caused a little bit of friction in my heart. And I'm thinking this is why. I'm really beginning to realize that I need to spend time sorting the trash. I have to quite literally sit down and make a list of all the good things in my life with pen and paper. And I know that sounds crazy in an era where everyone's using like the Notes app on their phone. I still need good old-fashioned pen and paper. I can remember many moons ago, maybe it's not many moons ago, geez, but I was in college and I had a bad breakup and I was in this funk for a while. And sometimes when you're going through, I mean, maybe not something as trivial as a breakup, but something that is where you're grieving something, it's easy to tap into this part of us that just only notices what is wrong in our lives. And as I said before, where we are not. So I did this a long time ago where I physically, in my dorm room, took one of those wipe off whiteboards and I wrote every little thing that was good in my life. And anytime I felt stuck in those thoughts, I looked up at that board. I was making a conscious effort to get out of that funk. And I'm still doing that today. And, I have a tendency to be able to list my grievances and forget my deliverances. I know that things happen that are bad in our lives, that are rough, situations that seem impossible. They are grief filled and exhausting. We all have those seasons. We all have those moments. We all have those valleys. And I've been there, and I'm certain I will be there time and time again over the course of my life. We can't avoid them. Even sometimes people think that if, because you're a Christian or a Christ follower, that means we should have no pain and suffering in our life. And that's just not the case. We can't avoid the pain and suffering that comes along with this life, this fallen world that we live in. And I also think that we shouldn't just gloss over it or subscribe to false positivity and just be like, oh, my world's falling apart, but I'm still grateful. I think I've mentioned that before. I don't think that's what the Lord is asking of us. And sometimes, I mean, at least for me, it's hard to come to Him with all of our garbage because there's a little bit of shame involved. And also, we know, hey, He gave His life for us. Really, He owes us nothing. However, one of the amazing, wonderful things about God's grace is that He does want to give us everything. But if we are too busy compiling the garbage, we have no room for it. I have to exchange my garbage for gratefulness, but it's hard. Because even though it stinks, it's still comfy to sit on top of here and not do the work of sifting through. I'm not saying don't pretend grief isn't there or that your fear over what's going to happen, where's your next paycheck going to come from, or the fear of a diagnosis, or what's going to happen with your children or your parents or people you love. I'm not saying that's not real and that's not something we don't have to feel. But by training my mind to see what He has done before when I meet those situations and believing He will do it again, just as He provided, just as He healed. Maybe not in my timing or the way I saw fit. However, He was still there. There was this point where I was walking through thyroid cancer. And after I had my first surgery, we were hoping I wasn't going to need a second. But unfortunately, I did. And I had to sit with something. How could I still think God is great if I'm not healed? I could picture somebody asking me that question. And I had to let myself even face that possibility that my cancer could progress or that I could undergo a surgery that I do not come out of. And I'm not saying I condone these thoughts, but they're there. We have them when we're going through something. They're real. And I thought to myself, what would be my witness then? And then it came to me. He always begins where I end. Even in this situation, I would have hope because although those outcomes would be absolutely devastating, and I hate the thought of me not being here to take care of my family, to know that they would go through some suffering, I know at the same time, He would watch over them. He would provide. He would bring them through. It would not be what I wanted, but they wouldn't be left alone. My story wouldn't be just finished by death. He would redeem all of this in the form of my family. And the funny thing was, not that funny, but in that moment, I almost recognized, had I not gone through a traumatic birth years earlier and a kind of a life and death situation there, I may not have been able to handle my cancer journey in the manner that I did. Because when I received that phone call and put down that phone, of course, instantly I had a wave of mixed feelings of panic, of fear. But then, as quickly as it came, it subsided. It's like the Lord just settled me. And I said, "You know what, Lord? You're right. I've seen this storm before. I've seen the wind and the waves. I've seen the darkness, but I've also seen how you've pulled me through. And for that, I am grateful. Sometimes we need those hard experiences to prepare us for what's coming next. And another wonderful part about the Lord is he can take those situations and use them to sustain you later in your life. And for that I am grateful. And there is the gift, the ability to have hope in the darkest of circumstances. That is something to be grateful for, if nothing else. Not just my house, not just for the sunshine, not just for the invention of loaded cheeseburgers, while all great things. It's the promise that he is the same today, yesterday, forever. I might have said that in the wrong succession. But even when I am not, even when gratefulness and happiness is situational and changes daily based on my emotions and what's happening to me, he sits beside me. Even when I try to move away, his love is unconditional. When I hate to admit it, my love sometimes seems to come with conditions. If I've learned anything about my past traumas, disappointments, grief, the low valleys I've walked through, it's that he always finds a way to find me. And he will wait there until I sort through my garbage. He will sit with me and he always welcomes me when I am ready. So I guess what I'm saying is maybe this season, it's not listing all of the things or the blessings I'm thankful for. Again, all good things to do, but maybe it's going deeper. I need to get to the root when things get hard because I think what I'm really thankful for at this moment is the character of Psalm 100, verses 4 through 5 says, "And his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. For the Lord is good and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations." And at face value, this is one of those Thanksgiving verses. Okay, I'm going to praise the Lord, thank him for everything he's given me. So glad his love endures forever. And just recently, as I've been struggling with searching for things to be grateful for, to really feel that deep rooted gratefulness, as I said before, realize that it's more the character of God. I want to praise the foundation and the founder of our blessings, if that makes sense, for his mercy and grace, because with my attitude, I'll be honest, guys, certainly I do not deserve it most days. And also that he always extends forgiveness rather than condemnation over and over again, for his love being steadfast when mine is wishy washy, for his faithfulness, knowing that he is working beyond me, even when I'm complaining that I can't hear him, I can't see him, I can't feel him, and for his power and his gratefulness that, we serve a living God that has raised the dead and performed miracles upon miracles. Nothing is too great for him. He does not have the limitations that we have. So this season, as you're hearing sermons about Thanksgiving and you're thinking about gratefulness, settle into trying to find the root of what you're grateful for, not just the things, but the provision of things. Look into God's character, all those points we just talked about, and sit and marinate with being grateful that he is the great I am in your life. Dear Lord, I thank you for everyone listening today. And dear God, I just thank you for your character. And I thank you for your unfailing and steadfast love. Dear Lord, I thank you that you are the great I am and that we can depend upon you at any time in any situation. Dear Lord, I pray that your love would just cover all those listening today and that they would feel you meet them right where they are at, and that they would not feel condemnation and that they would not feel shame for the parts where they feel more frustrated than grateful, but rather that they would bring that to you and they would work with you through that, dear God. Dear Lord, thank you for sending your son, for him dying on the cross, for the gift of life. Dear God, I pray that everybody finds something to be deeply grateful for, and they find the blessings in their lives that you've specifically given and entrusted to them this holiday season. In Jesus' name. Thank you again for pulling up a chair to the Dish It Girl podcast. Next week, I have another great side dish that puts a fun spin on one of our classic, well-loved Thanksgiving side dishes. So I hope you'll drop by next week for more encouragement from my heart to your kitchen.
Christian parenting.